Hello programmers and welcome back to yet another Kotlin for Noobs lecture. I'm your host, codingPotato. In this lecture and in the lecture after it, we will discuss the very basics of Kotlin programming. Since these two lectures are very important, they will both only be theory lectures. The lecture after them, lecture 3, will be a practical programming lecture where we will practice all what we will learn using different exercises and even program a simple game using IntelliJ, if God wills. Now without any more delays, let's start our lecture. So variables in Kotlin is today's topic. So let's start. Variables, as we saw before, we have used the name variable and assigned it a value of a string, which was codingPotato. We also assigned it other things previously. So in this slide, we talk about how Kotlin is a statically typed language. What does that mean? It means that variables cannot hold any type of value. For example, if you have a number, you cannot store it in a variable that is declared as the string type. So for example, this variable here is a string. We said that text is a string. What is a string? A string is a group of characters. Usually, when I type a character, for example an H, I put it in between single quotes like this. So this is a character. And the group of characters, usually in programming, is inserted between double quotes like that. So my string codingPotato, which is a group of characters between double quotes. So now, if I, at any point in the program, declare a variable of a string type, I cannot, for example, change that string and replace it with an integer, which is a number. So I cannot just take the codingPotato out from here and put, for example, 10. That would not work because, like we said, Kotlin is a statically typed language. Other languages, for example, Python or JavaScript, are dynamically typed. What does that mean? So in those languages, you can actually store any type of any data type in a variable. It doesn't matter. And you can later on replace that data type with a different value that is from a different data type, and that would work. Both approaches have pros and cons. We will not be getting too much into those, but when you have a dynamically typed language, you could make mistakes. For example, you can declare a variable at the beginning of your program and say that you are working on a very, very huge program. And somewhere in your program, in the middle or at the end, you assign your variable something else that is from a different data type. For example, let's say you put a string in a variable that you initially declared and assigned an integer. And then when you try to parse a number out of that variable, you get a string, which will lead to errors. So that is one issue with dynamically typed languages. Thankfully, we don't have such issues with Kotlin because the compiler will not let you compile anything that does not comply with its rules. So the rule here is that when you declare a variable, the data type of the value that you assign to this variable must be of the same type. So right here, you can see we have, first of all, the keyword val, which we agreed on before, that it is the keyword we use to declare variables. Declare variables. And then, after that, as we said before, it's the same thing, nothing new so far. The name of the variable comes after, and then we use the equal, just like math, for example, when you use the equal, it means make this equal to this. The right-hand side, in this case, to the left-hand side, which is weird, but that's how we think about it. So we are assigning this value to that variable on the left. And that's pretty much it. So let's move on. And here, what do we have here? Okay, now I don't like this example way too much because you guys still don't know what a class is. But hopefully I'll find a way to explain this. What this is saying, okay, let me tell you what a class is. So in object-oriented programming, everything is a class. We will talk about this later on in more detail, but just to understand this example. So everything is an object. So for example, you have a zoo, right? The zoo is an object. And inside the zoo, you have animals, for example. Each and every animal in the zoo is also an object. So in object-oriented programming, you think about everything as an object. So, for example, I have a person in any place. That person is an object, all right? So this right here, person, is an object. And technically, this right here is a class that I'm using to create an object. The new keyword tells you that you are creating a new object of the type person. So, and we're just assigning it to this variable called p. You can name your variables anything you want, but we will talk about that actually in a bit. There are conventions that you have to follow. But for now, you can, of course you can, even if you want to break the conventions and not follow them, you can do whatever you want. So, I called it P in this example. But notice the difference between the first one and the second one. In the second one, we have the colon extra, and we also have this person that is not in the first one. What is this saying? In the second one, I am telling the compiler to make the variable p of type person explicitly. So I'm telling it, like we said a moment ago, that we declare our variables to be of a specific type. So this variable p can only hold the data type of type person. And you can see person here is actually the class name. Class name. So I'm telling the compiler to create a new variable called p and assign it and declare it as a type of person, first of all. And then I assign it with the assignment operator and make it equal to a new object of type person. In the first one, I'm not doing that, but they both are correct and they both work. Why is that? It does mention here that Kotlin allows the programmer to decide whether to define the variable's data type or not. So they will actually tell you this, that the Kotlin compiler is smart. It will know to declare the variable as a specific data type. So you don't have to do that. So you're saving yourself from typing this, which I don't mind typing myself. Of course, not the P, but starting from. Oh, I just removed starting from here. All right. So you're saving yourself this. However, it does mention here in the second part that even if you don't specify it, the compiler is doing it for you in the first one. The compiler declared this, the type, as a person. So you can't come later on and put something else in there. In all cases, you can. Do you want to know why? I'll tell you why. Because there is a difference between val and var. We did not mention this before, so this is new. A val and the var are both keywords that we use to declare variables. However, there is a difference between the two. That difference is that val is, I can't type outside. Val is constant, or you can say that it's final. What does that mean? That means that when I declare it and assign it the value, I cannot replace this, even if it's of the same data type. This is used, for example, if you have, let's say, a simple example. Let's say that you have a phone number in your code. You don't want anyone, or you don't want yourself to change that phone number anytime in the future. So you use a val to declare a variable that holds that phone number for you, and it cannot be changed after that. Once it's declared and assigned, it cannot be changed. However, a var can have its value changed. Of course, it still needs to be of the same data type. So what we said earlier applies for vars, in the sense that if you want to replace the variable, the value stored in the variable, you will have to use the same data type. So here, in this example, the first example is pretty much straightforward. We are declaring the variable called name and assigning it the value of codingPotato, which is a string, and we are just printing it to the console. We did that in the previous practical video, and at this point, this should be pretty much straightforward for you guys. Okay, so on the second one, we are declaring a variable called name and assigning it the value codingPotato. Then we are printing this value. So the output for this one, let me just type it here. The output, let's follow with the program. The first line would be codingPotato. This is what I would see in the console. And then I am changing the value that's stored in the variable name. Notice here, I did not use the var keyword again. I just wrote name equal to something else. That would change it without creating a new variable. So I only use var or val when I'm declaring the variable for the first time. And later on, if I'm using a var, I can change the value with anything I want, given that it's the same data type. As you can see, these two are both strings, not numbers, not doubles, not integers, not anything else. And if you don't know what those are, it's fine. And then I'm printing again the name. So I did at the first time print the name, and at the second time I print the name. But since I changed the value that's stored in the variable, this time if I print it, even if I'm printing the same variable that's been declared before, now it's storing something else. So someone else would show on my console output. And that's pretty much the difference between vars and vals. So let's move on. We did this before. In the REPL, we did it in the REPL, we did it in the Kotlin program, which we made into a Java program. We pretty much everywhere. We used the $sign, if you remember, right here, this $sign. If you don't remember what this does, I have a variable called name, and it has codingPotato in it. So when I print my message, I have a string, but in the string, I have the $sign followed by the name of my variable, this one. So this will not print $sign name, this will print codingPotato instead, which is what it is doing is that it's replacing the value of the variable with this name here in the string. So my output would become my name is coding potato, etc. This won't fit. We used it before, and I told you I'm not going to tell you the name until we try it out. And its name is a string template. That's what it is. And we only used it for that. But in reality, string templates, so we can use them in other ways. Any valid Kotlin expression may be used in a string template. So for example, you don't have to focus on this too much. You just have to understand that a string template, the $, is used to inject, let's say inject. I'm not sure if it's the proper way to explain it, but let's say it injects. So the $, the string template, is used to inject part of the code into a string, so that I don't just have to print a string and have it shown as is. I can actually put some logic into the string, which is not possible in other programming languages. Some of them have workarounds. I'm not going to say all, but some. When you have a string, you can only print out a string. Sometimes you can format it with those languages, which we can also do in Kotlin, and we will have a look at that in a bit. But yeah, here we can use the string template to inject some logic to replace part of the string. So strings are a little more dynamic here. So let's see. Let's follow line by line, piece by piece. So we have a value 10 stored into a variable. So my message is, I'm printing out this message. Let's say that I did print line at the end. I did not put it here. Print line message. So that we can see the output, right? Because if I don't put this, I'm not going to see anything. So my output would be the beginning of the string, n plus 1. So far, don't be confused. This is just a string. So my output is n plus 1. Equal sign. It's an equal sign. We did not say anything about having a plus and a minus and an equal in a string. It's still a string. It's treated as a normal string. But then we have the $. Whenever you see the $, you know that something is about to happen. If you have the variable name directly after the $, you can not use the curly braces. But we use the curly braces to inform, because we can have spaces here. So to inform the compiler of the start and the end of the string template. So it's like the scope that we talked about. So it just encloses a specific area where I can put some logic inside. So I have n plus 1. So whatever is here is now logic. It's code that has to run. So we have n with a value of 10, right? So n plus 1 is, you will replace the n with the value 10 plus 1. So that's 11, right? So this is what you get on the console. You get n plus 1 equals 11. And you already know the n is 10, so it's like a calculator of some sort. Like a small, teeny tiny, small calculator game. So that's what it does. So it says again, string templates may contain logic as well, which what we already said. So this time you have message. Let's say we printed it out. So we have the $n. What will this do? This will just take the value -10. So -10 will come here. Let's just follow with it. -10, right? Is not followed by a $. So that's just part of the string. And we have no curly brackets. So as soon as this space here came, the string template has ended, right? But here we can have a space between them because we have my boundaries, which are the curly bracket. So -10 is, and then we have a $sign with a boundary. See, it starts here, and ends here. So everything here is logic. The rest of this string is logic. What does it say? Don't worry about this. We will talk about loops and things like that later on, but let's just see how this works. So this is a huge piece of code that's inside the string. If n is greater than 0, if you know common sense and if you already speak English, then you can just read it. If n is greater than 0, positive, else not positive. What does this mean? If you try to understand it without even knowing how to program or what this is, you would understand that it's saying if n is greater than 0, put the string positive. Otherwise, indicated with the use of the else keyword, give the string not positive. So, is n greater than 0? We have n here. It's -10. So that means n is less than 0. So we return not positive. The first one is returned if this succeeds. The second one returns if this fails. So this fails, obviously, because n is not greater than 0, which means that we will return this here. -10 is not positive, and that's another small game. That's another small game that you have. So you have your calculator thingy that adds literally 1 to any number you want, and you have this thing that tells you can, of course, if I replace this with any other number, let's say that you launch up your coding environment and you start trying this example, and you replace this with a 10 instead. And well, you know what? Let's do a 5 so that you don't get confused. This is -10, this is 5. So 5 is greater than 0. 5 will show up here. 5 is a string, will show up as it is. Positive, because this check is true, which will return the first value. Otherwise, it would return the second value. So 5 is positive. So if you don't know if a number is positive or negative, you can do this, and it will tell you, which is nice. So now, we're not done with string. There is more, yes. I know that this was probably scary for some of you. And to be honest, I don't like how it looks either, but it is what it is. It is helpful, and you will use it. If you are going to ever program in Kotlin, you will use it. So let's come here and look at string format. So the $sign, I know I said that you wait for the $sign to know that something is about to happen, but that was not completely true. We have the backslash. What is the backslash? How do I explain this to you guys? It's like the $sign. It tells the compiler that whatever comes after it, so I have here \t. If you can see, it's all together, but you'll have to focus. So if I have, let me zoom in a little bit, can't zoom anymore. \t. The backslash tells the compiler that whatever character comes after it is to apply something to this. How is that? And with backslash, don't have to worry about it. What's nice about it is that it only cares about the character that comes right after it. So the T, \n, stuff like that. So anything that comes after it is just part of your string. So if I have \nd, the command I'm sending is n. The D has nothing to do with it. While with the string template, you can use the curly braces to have a small area where you can do your magic inside. So formatting, what is it called? So we said this is a string template, and please memorize the names. I like to I'd like for you to become like you properly know what you are doing. Like some people would just Okay, I know the $sign and like we did in the first couple of videos, but I told you that we would talk about them in detail later on. I'd like you to learn things properly and use things properly. So later on, if you're sitting with a group of programmers and you're talking about Kotlin and someone says a string template and you have no idea what I'm already upset. You have no idea what a string template is. But you know how to use it, but you don't know what it's called. So this thing, the $sign, is string template. What this is called is control characters. It's mentioned here. I should have made it bold or wrote it somewhere. No, I'm an idiot. But don't tell anyone. So now, control characters, like I said, it's in the name. It's characters. It's one character followed by so not followed, preceded by the backslash character. So what is it? Are preceded with the backslash character, which informs the print or print line functions that it needs to treat the character after it as a control character. We have some examples. And let's look at the console output. Let's say this is our beautiful console. Did I spell that correctly? It looks weird. I don't know. So let's do this one after we read what each one of them do. So we have \t. This inserts a tab. And if you don't know what a tab is, it's right there on your keyboard. A little bit under your escape key, it says tab. This inserts usually 4 spaces, 4 empty spaces. So it's like you press the space key 4 times. So it inserts 4 empty spaces, which is exactly what this does. It inserts tab. So the second one inserts backspace. This is useful if you're going to work with something like serial communication, where you want to instruct another computer. If you're communicating with another computer, say you make a communication program that does whatever it does. I don't care about what sus things you do after you learn Kotlin. So it just inserts a backspace, which means it removes a character from the string. We won't be using it much, but it's useful to know what it does in case you do like serial or something like that. -n, I think we have used it before, haven't we? -n inserts a new line. So like I showed you with the REPL, remember when you used the print, everything was on the same line in the console or the terminal at that time. Everything was on the same line when I use print. But when I use print line or print ln, it prints the string and then goes into the next line. How does it go to the next line? It inserts this -n or /n or \n if you want to be specific. So \n tells the print command or the println command. Even if you use println, then you at the end you put -n, all right? You will get 2 spaces after. If you put like 2 -n's after each other at the end, you will get 3 spaces. You know why? You put 2 and you get 3. Because the println already gives you 1, already prints a line. Then you tell it to print another empty line, and then another empty line, so you get 3. So the R is carriage return. That's something for serial again. Carriage return, it's like in some places, like I said, in serial communication. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. You will, but not from me. If you work with microcontrollers or with something like microprocessors, hopefully I make videos about those in the future, if God wills. But yeah, you don't have to worry about it. So this inserts this, you get the idea. This inserts a single quote, this inserts a double quote. Because when you program, and if you actually put a double quote anywhere in the string, you will mess it up. You know why? Come on, use your brain. Because you already used double quotes to identify where your string starts and where it ends. So if you put a double quote in the middle, you're just going to, I don't know, mess things up. Your compiler will will complain, of course. So if you wanna put double quotes or single quotes, because single quotes, like I said, are used to identify a single character. So if you wanna put either of those, you have to use the backslash. We usually say that it breaks the quote. So it breaks it. It prevents it from doing what it actually does, and to be just used as a string. And if you want to actually put a backslash in your code that is really a backslash that you want it to appear in the string, you do the same. You escape it. If you want to put a dollar sign, of course, without it being a string template, you also do the same. So if I do a string and put dash s dollar, sorry, backslash dollar sign name, and let's say that I have name declared before this, so this will show as dollar sign name. It will not replace it because I escaped it with the backslash. And these are the control characters that we use for string formatting. So here, for our example, we have print, no line, just print. So we don't care about the new line for now. Backslash t, which will insert 4 spaces. Imagine that this is a space, empty space, 4 spaces. It's not a underscore or anything, it's just space. Kotlin for noobs, so 4 spaces. Kotlin for noob. Oh my god, what is this? In the terminal, it would show like my cursor is here, right? Remember from the REPL video? Go back one video and you would see this. When I did print line, my cursor was on the same line because I did not use println, which will give me a new line. But now we have backslash n, which tells it to go to the next time. So my cursor would be here. See? So now we have transformed a normal print method into a println method. Of course, the println is like easier than you having to go every time and insert a backslash n. Backslash n at the end of every string you have. So that is that. And now to naming conventions. So naming conventions, like I said, if you remember, like, I don't know, when did we start? I was going to say 4 or 5 minutes. It's been 30 minutes. So at the beginning, I said that you can call your variables anything you want, right? Well, you can forget about that because we have something that's known as naming conventions. Conventions are like rules, and you have to follow the rules. Otherwise, no one is going to work with you. Like, you make a program and you tell your friend who is another programmer, or let's say that you work at some company, and you do this. Where is it? Let me show you this. You do this. You actually name your variable p. No one is going to work with you if you do that, because this is not descriptive enough. How am I supposed to know what p is? Like, okay, when you declare it, you have the p equals new person. If I see it at the time it was declared, okay, I would know that this is of type person and it holds a person inside. But if I read it somewhere else in the program, I see p is equal to something. And you also have the object named something weird. It is a person, but it's, I don't know, whatever name you put for that, you name it z. P equals z, and I see p equals z. How do you think I would feel? Very not good. Very, I don't want to say anything bad, but sorry, but you're an idiot if you do that. So naming conventions mitigate this issue. What is a naming convention? We have something known as camel case. What is camel case? And why did I write it like that? I have no idea. Camel case is a style of naming that says, for example, if I wanna call something, come on. If I wanna write the word naming conventions as one word, when you can't use spaces, okay? You can't use spaces. You can't make a variable called naming space convention. A space usually means that something else is coming, like a new statement or an expression or whatever. So you can't use spaces for names. Everything has to be one word. But to mitigate this issue, we have the camel case. Camel case says, so I have naming conventions. I start with a capital letter, naming, and the other word, conventions, and the first letter of every word is a capital letter. This is camel case. But in Kotlin, we use something called the modified camel case. I'm not going to type it again or write it again. The modified camel case just says that we, instead of putting the capital letter for the first one, we just put it for the second one. So it would be like naming convention. So just like that. So this is a valid variable name that everyone likes. And if you only have one word like name, as you saw before, I was just writing name, all small letters. So that is not an issue. And if you have something long, let's have a look at the examples. Actually, why am I doing extra effort? So first one, your name, small letter, capital letter for name, and username, another example, account name, another example, is correct, another example, is something correct. We usually write it as is correct. The C is capital, the I is small. And even if you have like hundreds and hundreds of words that you want to put together, you do this. Small letter, capital for every other word. And for some reason this says user users. This is users. It's supposed to be users, but like I said, I'm 15 mentally, so cope. Alright, so we said this, but then in the example, we go up to the same stupid example where it has a P. This is capital letter. So person starts with a capital letter. So you lied to us. No, I did not lie to you. This is not the variable name. This is the class name, the one that's used for the object. In Kotlin, we use the full camel case for objects, classes, whatever you want to call them. We use the full camel case. So if this was person, let's say its name is person1, or person, let's say person policeman, something like that. So it would be like person police, capital, man, capital. So capital, this is the full camel case. This is used for classes, objects, stuff like that. We don't know what those are yet, but later on, if God wills, we will. So just remember that the full camel case is used in Kotlin, but for something else other than variables. You can see that this is a lowercase p here. This is a lowercase p because it's a variable name and it's just one letter, so there is no capital for the first letter, and we just used lowercase. So that's that. Alright, so now I'd like to show you guys the assignment operator. It's just the equal sign that we were using to, like I said, from right to left, assign a value to a variable. However, it's not only used to assign values to variables like integers, numbers, strings, stuff like that. It can also be used to assign the return value to a variable. return. Why is my handwriting so bad? Return value like this. What's the return value? Some functions, not all functions, some functions actually return a value after they execute. So right here we have the readLine function. We are seeing for the first time, I think. What does the readLine function do? The readLine records the input that the user sends to the computer through a keyboard. It records this input and then returns it. Where does it return it? We catch this returned value and we save it into a variable so we can print it out, manipulate it, use it for calculations, etc. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So for example, if I run this line of code, I type hello on the keyboard, then press enter. It's called readLine because it reads a line. It waits for the user to hit the return key, if you call it that, or the enter key, if you call it that. It's the same key. It's the key that we all know, the enter key. If I hit return or enter, let's say enter because we're already talking about returning. So I click enter. After hello, this will return the value immediately. It will return hello. Hello would be saved in this variable. That's pretty much it. So now I would like to explain the difference between statements and expressions. So this here, what is this? This is assigning something to something. But sometimes we do calculations like we did it before. For example, here 6 plus 9. If I do val result, I call it result, equals 6 plus 9. The 6 plus 9 is called an expression. Calculations, logic, stuff like that are called expressions. While assigning values or calling functions is known as a statement. So right here, is this a statement or an expression? It's a statement. Because it's both what I said. It's assigning a value to a variable, so assignment is a statement. Also calling functions like the readLine is a statement. So this line is a statement, while this is an expression. Expressions can include other things that we will learn about in the next video. So for now, let's say expressions are logic. Statements are like assignment, doing like telling the program to print something out. So what it says here, it's saying that usually statements are usually a single line of code, like here, like I print something out or. But there are exceptions. For example, here you can see 4 lines of code, right? But this is actually just 1 line of code. It's just a statement that's calling the println command to print a string. But this string is a little bit special because I split it up. How? So first of all, I pass the function. You can see, let's first of all identify where the arguments start and where they end. I have my bracket start here. So this is the first bracket, right? And I have the closing bracket here, number 2. So it means everything in here is being passed as an argument to the println command, right? So let's see. I have a string, the total population of, let me remove this because let's say my console is here. All right, this is my console. The total population of, let me just write it down there. Total, this is my output. population of, and I will continue here, but it's the same line. There is no print line. Print line does not work as of yet. It is a print line, but not yet. It has to finish everything. And I'm using the addition operator. The addition operator with the strings allows you to concatenate two strings. Concatenate means add. So if I have like a string, hello, and another string, there, and I wanted to say hello there, what do? I just put a plus, and this is my argument, and print. This will say hello there. It's the same result if I do hello there. Like this. It's the same result between double quotes, something like that. So I can concatenate strings, but it's not just strings. I can actually concatenate. So we said strings are a group of characters between double quotes. But if I have a variable, usually when we printed variables before, we just used the string, so hello, and we used the operator name with the variable. Sorry, this is the $sign. Hello, and it replaced this with the name I put, which was codingPotato or something. I can not use this. I can just do hello and then concatenate it with the addition operator and put the name variable. It will still, since this is not a string, it's a variable, it will take the value and put it here. So this is what we are doing here. We have a city, a variable called city right here. A variable called city, which has the name of the city. Let's say the total population. Let's say that city was defined previously and assigned the value of Dubai. The total population of, it will do like this, Dubai is, which is just a string, is, and then we have population. Let's say population has like, this is not accurate, but let's just say 200, which is a number. So I can do that. So it's a string, like hello. If I do this, hello, plus 200, let's say it's not a variable, I just put in 200 manually. This is my argument, and I just do print. This will also work. So whether it's an integer or a number or a string, you can still concatenate them, but the output will be a string. Just remember that Kotlin will take this and make it a string. It will append it to this, concatenate them, and print it out. So that's pretty much it. But in this case, we split it out like this. We can just put plus and then continue on the same line, then another plus and continue. But this is easier to read. Some programmers would actually do the first string. So you can see this is longer, right? The plus is here. They will bring this here to make it even easier to read. So plus city is here, right? It looks nice also. Plus is, the string is, and they put it here. So they put the pluses right under each others. So the empty space, when you see the empty space, you know that this is all part of the same statement. So this is a scenario where you can have a statement that has more than one line. So that's it for statements and expressions. We said statements are like assignment or calling functions. Expressions are like logics. Computation, it says here, computation that can generate a value like 6 plus 9 is an expression, not a statement. And I showed you the difference between using string templates, like we talked about it, string template, $sign name, or you can just concatenate with the addition operator. We will talk about it later, maybe in the next video. If God wills, will be a practical where we try all this together. We will actually, the next video, we are going to use IntelliJ together for the first time, and we will be for the first time doing like an exercise that has all this put together into one exercise. So now we are talking about comments in code. Comments in code. And I actually forgot that this can do this. Alright, so we have a heart because now we know that we can put some comments in our code. So if you have your code, for example, here, look at the example, we don't need all this. You have your code and you want to leave yourself a note for the future you to tell it something. Tell it like, I was an idiot, or I am an idiot now, and you should be better than me, because you are future me, and I have high hopes for myself. How do you put it? If you type it like manually in between the lines of code, it will generate a lot of errors, because the compiler will think that you are typing code, but in reality you're just putting some notes for yourself. For that, you can use this, a double / character. Anything after this character is not compiled by the compiler, and it's ignored even if in the final file it's not there. The compiler just ignores it completely. It's not compiled at all. So it only exists in the project files where you made your code. So just use this character, double / and put whatever you want after that. That would be a comment. Like here it says this is a single line comment that is not compiled, and here you have your code, and this will not affect it at all. So what if you have a multi-line comment? Like one comment is not enough for your future self-guidance session, and you want to give yourself like some more instructions. So you can actually use the multi-line comments in Kotlin, which start with / character, or the star, whatever you call it, and ends with on some other line elsewhere with an asterisk, another / and all these lines can include your diary, for example, whatever you want. If you want to put your diary in your code, feel free, I'm not going to stop you. So that's a multi-line comment, single line comment, double / ****, and here it says you can use multi-line comments, for example, on top of a function to explain what this function does in detail, while these you can use on top of a function. You can use it here after a statement. You can do it here, by the way, and you have another line of code here. You can do it wherever you want. There's nothing stopping you. You just can't put it here, because if you put it here, this will count as part of the text that's included in the comment. So you can put it after, actually. You can put it on top and put a new line under it. Do whatever you want. Go crazy with it. And you have the multi-line comment, which usually is used to explain functions, because just look at this. It looks like it belongs there. Explain whatever you are doing and then do your function. For example, say this function is calculating the square root of something that is astronomically large, whatever. That's for comments. But there's something special about multi-line comments. Multi-line comments can include something known as kdocs. What is kdocs? Kdocs is a markup language. If you already know XML, HTML, or you actually know the README markup language that's used in GitHub, if you are a technical person, it's the same thing. In a multi-line comment, I can use the @ character followed by some it's similar to this, like control. We took it earlier, the control characters, something like that, but except that they're not characters, they're actually control words or something like that. So for example, I can, at the beginning of my program, with the main loop, we said that the main, not loop, function. The main function is the starting point of the program, so I can put some hints for other people to see. So I can use @author space, there's a space, and then put whatever my name is. @since is used to identify the version. So this program started with the version 1.0. Since 1.0, this has been here. You can also put cross references, for example C, and I put my website. You can also مثلا, for example, put @C a name of a function main, a name of a class or object main or person, which we already talked about. So you are telling him, before you actually read this or try to work on this, check the person class or the main class first. So that is it, but you would ask yourself, how is this even useful? There are programs, it's mentioned here, I don't really use them, but processing such as Docker. It's a processing tool. Right here it says it's a processing tool that actually reads these from your project files and displays them for the person who is like inquiring about your program. So these are somewhat useful. They are useful when you use the, it's not here, but you use the @param control word, like we said. The @param, after it you explain the parameters that are passed. Technically we pass arguments and they are received here as parameters. We will talk about this a little bit later. But yeah, in @param, we can use it to tell the person who is reading the code what parameters are passed to the function. So let's say that here it takes a string message. So I would say here message is a parameter and explain something like the reason for this. The message should be between or contain something like that. So you explain the parameters here, and some IDEs would actually inform the users that use this function that, okay, you have the param symbol or the param kdoc. It will show the small message that you left. So it is helpful. So finally, we are now at data types. Data types in Kotlin. We have already seen strings and we said that we put them in the double quote character. So this is a string. It's called a string. The data type itself is called a string, capital S, always data type. We've seen numbers, for example 10. 10 we said is an integer. We saw it in the REPL and we saw that it returned a value in the last video. And I told you integer means that this number is of type integer, which is 10. Whole numbers are integer, whether it is positive, negative, or something like that. We have doubles. Doubles are numbers with a decimal point. So 10.5, 10.2, 5.3, anything that has a point in it is of the data type double. However, so these are some variable types. However, each data type actually has a different size in the memory. So we said that variables are stored in the memory. The data type dictates how much memory this variable takes. So for example, let's say the data type of byte. The size in bits, which are ones and zeros, is 8 bytes. But why should we care about the size? The size controls how much this actually can fit in the memory. So a byte can have the value from negative 128 to positive 127. So if I have a number that's, for example, 200, I cannot store it in a byte. This will not work. I need more space. And if I have a number like -200, I cannot store it because it's out of the range. I need something that has more space as well. But for example, let's say that you have a small program and you know that your variable will not exceed the number 10. Then you can store it safely in a byte because it's within the boundaries. So let's now look at the short. So short is also, but by the way, those are numbers. All of them are numbers. There is no string, something like that, or no characters. Although bytes can be related to characters, but let's not talk about that. Those are numbers. 16 bits is a short. The range is this, which is big. So you can have up till 32,000 something and -32,000 something and store it safely in a short. Then you have the integer with which we have been working so much with. Now, the integer type is the default data type for number. Without a decimal, by the way. Yeah, focus on that, without a decimal. It's the default. So if we said that you can do this and not declare the data type. So val number, the name, equals 10. It's not declared the type, right? Like we said in the beginning. It's a smart. We said it's a smart, right? The compiler is a smart. What it's inferring here is that it's doing an integer. So the default for numbers is integer. It's declaring it as an integer. But I know that as a programmer, of course, I am smarter than the smart compiler. So I say this is like a lot of wasted space in the memory, which is a very good practice. You must not waste space in the memory. Your program must be efficient and lightweight. So I will do this. Val number, and we said like this. We do not integer, it's already integer. I'll store it as byte equals 10. So here I specified the data type myself, like we said like we saw in the beginning, where we had the person. So you just do the keyword, the name, data type, assignment operator, and the value. Straightforward and easy. You have the colon here, which separates the data type from the name. That's pretty much it. So it's best practice to choose the data type that fits your needs and does not exceed by much. So you have something that's in the range of 0 and 10, and you're using something, for example, that goes to the range of 32,000, which is a waste. You're wasting bits. Don't waste bits. The integer and the long, which is this astronomical number, which I can't read. Yeah, that's a lot of numbers. So that is for integers, and we said integers are any number, positive or negative, without a decimal. Floating point types are the types with decimal points. So 5.2, positive or negative, doesn't matter. So we have two types, float, double. The float is 32 bits, the double is 64 bits. Just like before, it's bigger. However, the double is the default. Double is the default. It's mentioned in if you read the document, you will know all this that I'm saying. I'm just explaining what's written already. So if I do val float number, float, see how I called it? Number, naming convention, capital and small. Float number equals to 10.26. This is declared as a double because I did not specifically assign the data type. But if I do, I know that 32 bits is enough for me. So I can do val float num, let's call it num, num is short for number, and the colon float equals 10.52, which is, float is plenty. Float is actually very big. So now we know that double is the default, and here the integer is the def, the default. However, if I don't want to type the val float variable here, float var here, and what was it, float equals 10.5, this is a shorthand method. You can just put the letter F at the end and not type the whole name of the, this is only for floats and longs, by the way. So you have the long and the float have this shortcut. So you can just do val, the name. It's smart enough, so we said by default it will do a double, but if you put an F it will make it a float. You don't have to do the full data type name, typing it after a colon thing. And it works with the long. Here it says, otherwise that variable will be declared as a double. The same applies for long. So if you don't do this or that, where we did the declaration of the type manually, it will be a double for floating point. Booleans. What is a boolean? A boolean is just used to indicate the state of something. The value of a boolean is only either true or false. Something is true or false. This is used in logic. So you just want a value. For example, your application is a weather application. It says, is it morning? Is it morning? And it knows that it's morning. It will do the checks and something will assign this to either true or false. You can use this in loops, not in the practical video that's coming next. If God wills, in the video after it, we'll talk about loops where we will need this. We need to know if something is true, something that the state of it is happening, and something that is false, something that is negated, something that is not happening. So that is the Boolean data type. We have something known as unsigned integer values. What is an unsigned integer value? Let's say we said, for example, the byte has a range from negative to positive, right? Between 128 and 127. Let's say that my number will never be negative. For example, it's only positive. For example, if I am counting the number of people or students in a classroom. Now this number can never be negative unless, I don't know how it can be negative. There is no unless. It can never be negative. It can either be 0 or positive. So I can use an unsigned integer value. How do you use that? This is, by the way, for integers. It says here it cannot the negative or plus. It says memory. And it helps you because if you try to assign a negative value, for example, negative 10, into an unsigned integer value data type, the compiler will not compile it and it will give you an error. So it's for safety, sort of. So we have the name of the variable, the val keyword, and we can use this colon to identify. It's called unsigned int, like this, equals 5. Or there is a shortcut method, just like the float and the long. You can just ignore this part, do it normally, the smart way, and put a u. If you don't put the u, what will this become? This will default to the integer data type. Any number will default to the integer data type. That is not a floating point, of course. If it has a floating point, it will default to the double. So we can put a U, capital U, or you do the uint to define manually the type of the variable, like we said at the beginning of this lecture. So numeric conversion. Let's say that you have a float. You have 10.2. You don't want the 2. You want it to become an integer. You want it to become 10. So you want to ignore whatever is here. You can actually do that. For example, here, val d equals 45.3. Now, stay with me. This is a double, right? Right. It defaults to a double because it's a floating point. And now I have the double. I want to convert it to an integer. See here, I'm explicitly declaring the data type after the colon. The I is the variable name. Here after the colon is the type integer. Can I store a float or a double in an integer? No, that can never happen. So what do? I use something, a method or a function actually, that converts this into a integer. What is it called? It's just called toInteger. By the way, functions follow the modified camel case as well. So you can see the function called to. It starts with a small letter and then a capital letter. The only thing that uses the full camel case is the classes, which we will look at later. So now, I told you some functions can have a return value. This function will take this number, it will do its tricks and magic and dark stuff, sassy things to the float or the double, and it will return it to me as an integer. I use the assignment operator like we said to assign the returned value, which would be in this case 45. It will return it. I use the assignment operator, right hand to left hand side, store it in the variable I of type integer. No errors, no mistakes, nothing. It will compile and work 100% of the time. And here it says that these functions are smart. So for example, if you have a number as a string, so this variable is a string, it will actually, if you use the toInteger function, it will actually return 42. So I can pass these a string value or a proper value of the type. As you can see, we use the variable name s, then the dot character, to int capital, of course. The s is the name. The dot operator, we will have a look at it later. It just says that this function, I am taking it from the variable. Variables do have functions because they are also objects. Like I said, in object-oriented programming, everything is an object. So the object that actually creates the variables for me, this may be very confusing for you now, but I'm just saying that there are functions for variables, which I can access using the dot operator. Any function in this value I can access. So let's have some examples of the functions that I can use for conversion. You have the toByte, which gives me a byte, toShort, takes any value, converts it to short, toInteger, toLong, toFloat, toDouble, toCharacter. Character, as we said before, it's this thing between single quotes, which is only one character. And a string is a group of characters between double quotes, like this. So, can have a look at these by yourself. Alright guys, so that is all for this time. Until next time, and remember, on the internet, nobody knows that you're a potato, especially not a coding potato. And I would like to conclude with, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.